New calls today for term limit reform within the City of Huston. Mayor Anise Parker and others are calling for changes to the term limit structure, which allows 3 two-year terms for mayor, city controller, and council members. The mayor plans to ask council to present voters with a plan to shift to 2 four-year terms. She added that this change would not apply to her term, which ends in 2016. So are shorter terms a disadvantage to Houston politics, or is the high turnover what the city needs? Joining us live in our newsroom again, we have our legal analyst Chris Tritico, news analyst Mustafa Tamiz, and public policy analyst Jackie Bally. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Very difficult to keep up with the changes in City Hall. I know there's a constantly revolving door, especially among council members. Does it make it hard to get things done, having those short terms?
Well, I think that when you see changes, rapid changes like that, you don't have enough time in office to learn how to be a good councilman. And I think that's part of the problem that the mayor's talking about. It's going to take you, a term or half a term at least, or a full term, just to learn how to do it. It's not as easy as people think it is. And so learning the politics and learning how to be how to govern is the problem the mayor's talking about. And so if she can end this revolving door, then that's, in her opinion, going to be in the best interest of the city. Jackie Bally, 2 four-year terms is what the President of the United States gets. What's the difference?
When you're in a local position, as what we're talking about here, our constituents and residents want to have access to our elected officials. It's more intimate. They want to make sure that they hold us accountable. I can understand how some people may think that's a little bit excessive, because by the time you get in office, you have to turn around and run again. I did it in Sugar Land. However, I do feel that the reason why we have this in place is because we're in a democracy and we serve at the will of the people. So the high turnover, because I don't believe it actually is high turnover, but we did see a turnover in this last election cycle. That's not typical of what we've been seeing in a lot of the other cycles we've had at City Hall. So it's taking this one example and saying this is the reason why we want to do this, I disagree with. I think the 2-year terms that the city already has in place, I think it's a wonderful example. And if we actually change term limits, or in some cases people are talking about getting rid of term limits, then you end up with people like Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi, who's been in office since the 80s. We don't want that.
Well, some don't. Mustafa, you don't agree with that. What is there a reason to have term limits at all? You look at District A, Brenda Stardig, won. Helena Brown took her out. Brenda took her out. Why do we need term limits at all?
Well, I think the debate in Houston is not whether we should have term limits or not have term limits. The debate basically is to have smart term limits. Like right now, what you have is that you get elected, you serve a year, you're back campaigning again, and then you serve a year, you're back campaigning again. And that one brings more money into politics, because every time you're out there raising money.
The potential for more graft.
Potential for that. But also it's distracting. You're not focused on public policy. So if we have smart term limits, which is what the mayor's proposing, 2 four-year terms, you're up on the ballot, you're not going to be there forever, and it gives the public an opportunity in midway through your career to vote you in or vote you out again. So I think that's probably where we have to head.
And that taking the money part out is a big advantage, not only to the city, but if you talk to members of Congress, they can't stand this constant election cycle.
Of course they don't, because there's a chance if they actually do something against the will of the people, or do something that's not what they should be doing, then they get elected out, and it's a lot quicker to hold them accountable. If we have 4-year terms, think about if we have someone who's corrupt and we have a 4-year term, it will take us that long to get that person out. The fact that we have these smaller cycles, again, it's going to make it very difficult for our local elected officials not to listen to their constituents, not to abide by the will of the people. And again, when you have a local level, we do want access to our elected officials.
All right, let's go to Sally. We'll come right back to that in a minute. Sally's monitoring our social media accounts. Sally, what are you finding?
Yeah, we want to get your comments in. Arnetta says turnover is good. It breeds more fresh ideas. This morning, a guy by the name of Guppy Man on our Facebook page, he says term limits are always a good thing. I would make them even shorter, 1 term only for any office. That way the folks who got there would do the job, public service, rather than spend their time in office trying to get reelected. So talking a little bit about what Mustafa was hitting on there.
Yeah, I'm Guppy man, that's just not a good idea.
I like to address
not trying
Guppy
to
Man.
follow
Man can
anybody
have
named
words
Guppy.
later. You'll have to respond to him later, Chris.
I want to address Guppy Man. Guppy Man, listen to me. Look, it's not that you want people in and out. You want people to do the people's work. And the way to do that is to give them time. Public policy is not something you walk in and change overnight. It takes time to move public policy. And the way to do it is principally to build consensus amongst council. And so we're not against term limits. What we're for is basically smarter term limits.
All right, and we're going to, I think are we out of time? We got time for one more?
Well, I think it is smart term limits, the way the city is currently operating. And again, whenever we want to come back to our elected officials and say, these are the things that we would like to see implemented, it'll be pretty difficult for them to say no or to ignore those wishes when you know that you're up for re-election, as opposed to just sitting there and saying, I'm going to be a politician.
I got 4 more years, so I'll do what I want. We're going to see where this goes, and we'll see if council passes it. It's going to be interesting to watch the mayor's last term here, Sally. She knows she's out of office, and she's proposing some big changes for the city.
She doesn't want to be a lame duck mayor, clearly.
She does not.
She wants to get some other things accomplished. So, okay, and maybe run for state office after that. So
We'll see.
We'll have to see. Okay, thanks, guys. We'll see you next hour.